Well, we're going to get into a hot button topic this week, immigration. But what I want to do is to take it to that level of spiritual exercise, where we learn to connect with the presence of the Lord and to discern what we're called to do as faithful Catholics. That's what we're going to get at this week. So there's this great idea in the church, which is the clergy, the priests, the pope, we are called to inform consciences, but not replace them. So the proper role of the priest, the proper role of the church, is to give the concepts, to speak on the behalf of people, certainly, in certain regards, but we recognize that government leaders and the laity have a certain mission, and there's a certain, we don't want to say autonomy, but there is a little bit of a difference. So what is our role as priests? What is the role of this video? To kind of inform your conscience and to help you to discern as government leaders, as voters, where you need to vote. So we hear in the first reading, first of all, it's always connected with the readings, and we hear in the first reading, "You shall not molest or oppress an alien, for you were once alien yourselves in the land of Egypt. You shall not wrong any widow or orphan." So the idea in the first reading, which is from Exodus, is that we should have a care for those in our midst who are outsiders, that we should have a certain love for all people, and we should guard against this idea of creating an in-group where it's us versus them. And then we hear in the gospel that everything must be grounded in the love of Jesus Christ. Now, we want to be careful. So the church teaching isn't that we just have to accept anybody and everybody under the sun, that anybody who wants to come to your country, tough luck, you need to accept them. Now, that's not what love is about. Love is not just simply about, I got to treat everybody nice and I got to be kind to everybody. Yeah, you want to have some niceness and some kindness, but love is grounded in justice as well. So the church's teaching is two teachings that kind of balance each other, that help to form prudence. First, governments and cities and countries have the right to regulate who comes into their country. They have a right to protect their borders. They have a right to have reasonable processes of immigration, or even at some time to exclude immigration. The church does allow for that, the teachings of the church and the social teaching. But on the same hand, there's also a balancing right that people who are in desperate situations, so if you're in a country where there's violence, there's intense poverty, people have a certain right to migrate. So if you're in a place where they don't have the means of supporting themselves, they don't have to stay there and starve to death, but they have a certain right to be able to migrate. And these two things need to be balanced. I would never say that you have to support one party platform or another. I think in our current political climate, with all of its charged emotions and with a lot of rhetoric, I think it can be hard sometimes as citizens to know exactly where we should stand on certain issues. But what we need to learn to do is we need Catholics in politics. We need Catholic voices in the voting booth. We need to vote our values, which is that love and care for the immigrant, for the foreigner, but also that need to protect and to promote justice within our society, both for the immigrant and for the native people as well. So consider that in this week's spiritual exercise. Now, what I would ask you to also consider is where love comes into it, is we need spiritual freedom. I'm convinced of this. If what you're consuming in terms of political content is getting you angry, if you're losing your cool, if you're starting to stereotype people, or if you're starting to buy into some of the way media manipulates our emotions, then you really need to consider the media you're consuming. Because authentic discernment takes place in spiritual freedom, when we're not being ruled by strong emotions that hijack our reason. So consider that this week's spiritual exercise. Consider, praying about the current issues, learning about them, but also cultivating that spiritual freedom. Amen.